So recently I pulled these retro gaming PCs from my garage. Shout out to my dad, he's the one who put these together. Anyways, these PCs are unironically older than me, dating back to the Windows XP era and still using the AGP port. In terms of specs, these PCs are almost identical with AMD Athlon 64 CPUs and 512 megabytes of DDR RAM. The only thing that differs between these PCs are the graphics cards, one being a GeForce 6800 GT and the other one being some sort of AMD card. If I could tell you, I would, but only one of the computers was functional, obviously the one with the NVIDIA card, so for now the AMD card remains a mystery. But yeah, like I said, only one computer is functional, the other one has some sort of faulty power supply, and that can't be fixed without buying a new one. So for now, we're just going to be looking at one of the PCs. If you do end up enjoying my content, please consider dropping any video ideas in the comments below, or just leaving a like or subscribing. Anyways, that's just about it for the intro, so let's get into the actual video. Like I said previously, this PC has an AMD Athlon 64 CPU and 512 megabytes of RAM. Nothing too interesting or out of the ordinary for a PC of its time. As I'm sure most of you have noticed now, the PC isn't a custom build, but rather parts added on to a pre-built computer, those being additional memory and a GPU. One thing that surprised me about this card at the time was the fact that it used the Molex connector to power it, something that doesn't get a lot of use today. I've really only seen it being used to power chains of fans in PC cases. This graphics card was actually pretty high-end for its time and utilizes the AGP graphics port as opposed to the PCIe standard we're all used to today. Speaking of the PCIe standard, this graphics card was released in a pretty unique time where AGP was still pretty commonplace, but PCIe was also starting to take over. Because of this model of card actually had two different versions of it, one that used the AGP graphics port and one that used PCIe. It's pretty weird to think that the AGP port was replaced within 7 years of its debut, and PCIe has been going strong for over 2 decades now. Looking back to 2004, this card was actually considered to be pretty high-end at the time, and to be honest, there wasn't a lot of information about this specific variant of the 6800 GT by BFG, aside from store listings, but honestly, this graphics card is one of the most unique looking ones I've ever seen, featuring 2 fans encased in some metal housing on top of some thin copper heat pipes. Even though a lot of graphics cards at the time were really goofy looking compared to the ones now, this one just stands out in my opinion. Anyways, this just about sums up the sort of history and rundown about this computer and the graphics card I found to be pretty interesting. Jumping straight into this, the first thing I obviously did was inspect the RAM, this being one of the easiest things you can do when working on a desktop. 512 DDR. The next thing I did was remove the CPU cooler. I actually ended up regretting this because I expected the thermal paste to be crusted because this PC was almost 2 decades old at this point, but it actually ended up being the opposite and it was still quite moist. It still gave me an excuse to repaste this PC, but I'll be the first one to say that it definitely didn't need to happen. Sticky, but we got it out. As you can see, it's already moist. I then used 91% isopropyl alcohol to clean off the excess thermal paste. Isopropyl alcohol is just really ideal to wipe this stuff off because it evaporates really quickly. Anyways, after cleaning everything off, I repasted the CPU and assembled the cooler back into place. In terms of refurbishing the PC, that's about it. I had already cleaned this PC off camera, so now we're gonna get on to reinstalling the operating system and getting some games working on this. Now it's time to pack up the PC, and I'm going to be doing a fresh install of Windows XP on this thing. The tool I use for creating fresh installs of older operating systems like these is WinSetup from USB. This video isn't sponsored by them, but I'd just like to give them a shout out. Creating a bootable USB from Rufus with older operating systems is kind of difficult, and WinSetup from USB just allows you to do it really quickly. Don't get me wrong, Rufus is great, but WinSetup from USB is really good when dealing with old OSs. So I'll drop a link to the website for anybody looking to do something similar. Honestly, the install for Windows XP went without a hitch. It was really easy and pretty fast, surprisingly. So computer name, I like that name, Fortnite. so I think we'll keep it. Once I booted into Windows XP, I customized it a bit just to make it a bit more aesthetically pleasing to look at. One more thing I did was go on the GeForce website and install the drivers for the graphics card. This was also just incredibly simple to do. I was honestly expecting a lot more of this to be complex, but it really wasn't. Well, except for one part. For some reason, the audio drivers just weren't there, and because I wasn't connected to the internet, I had to manually search on my other computer for drivers and transfer them over. Keep in mind, I wasn't even sure if it was a driver problem, as I had tried multiple drivers and none of them seemed to work, until I finally found one online, which I'll link down below, that worked for me. The driver I found was on the Major Geeks website. Aside from this, they've actually been pretty useful for providing information and useful download links for this project, so shout out to them. Anyways, now that we've finally installed Windows XP along with the drivers that go with it, let's finally play some games.
Rise and shine, Mr. Freeman. Rise.
As you can see, Half-Life is not working great on this PC. I was really disappointed by this because this PC is the perfect era to run this game on. This gaming PC and game were both built around the same time, so I thought it'd be like a perfect game to play. But for some reason, I was getting really bad graphical errors.
Welcome.
And half the props is not even loaded. I have no clue why. Maybe with a little more research I could figure out how to get this game to run, but as of now it just wasn't working. Aside from the crazy graphical errors, I was actually getting a pretty good frame rate. I don't know how relevant that is considering half the game isn't even there, but it ran smooth enough. Anyways, the next game I tried, I actually had physical media to use, and that was Unreal Tournament. Playing offline was smooth. I had to lower the resolution, but other than that, the game ran well. All in all, I would say Unreal Tournament was actually a success. It ran well, I had no graphical errors, and it ran incredibly smooth. The last game I tried putting in was Grand Theft Auto 3, which I also had a physical copy for. Sadly, I experienced the same fate Half-Life 2 did, and it was just getting a bunch of graphical errors with models not loading in and just not looking good at all. Honestly, I'm not too sure what's causing this. It could be something driver related, or it could be something on the hardware level, but again, I'm just not sure. If anybody has any advice on how to keep this computer from throwing so many graphical errors, that would be great. And like I previously said, I already installed the most recent drivers I could find for it, but I still don't really know what to do. Alright, so that just about sums up this video. If you made it this far, thank you so much, and I really hope you enjoyed the video. I hope I can get the power supply working for the second computer because that would be great to explore as well. If you have any ideas or recommendations about this computer or even the other one I couldn't get working, please drop them below. Anything helps and it would be greatly appreciated. Or just video ideas in general. I'm always willing to try something new in terms of computers. If you did find this video entertaining, feel free to drop a sub and leave a like. And if you didn't, drop a dislike and be sure to tell me why. Anyways, that's all I really had to say, so see you guys next time.